Together is the latest body horror flick to hit theaters. The film is directed by Michael Shanks, and this is a horror film that's had a ton of buzz around it ever since it started playing at festivals around the country. But then most recently, the production company Neon, which always does a great job marketing their films, but especially their horror films, started marketing this movie, and they did it in such a fun way. Whether it was with the actor and actress who are the stars of this film, who are going around and marketing this around the country, or it was with the billboards around the country that if you and your loved one took a picture in front of where you guys were kissing in front of the billboard, well, Neon would actually take that picture and they would put it on their social media account, and that generated a lot of buzz. And then, of course, my favorite piece of marketing from this entire campaign was Neon jumping on the Coldplay bandwagon when that dirty CEO and that dirty HR rep decided to cheat on their spouses at a Coldplay concert. Well, they posted this on their social media, and again, that was my favorite piece of marketing overall. But the marketing worked for me. Even though I'm not the biggest body horror fan, I got excited for this film and I went and saw it, and I had a great time. Let's do the review for Together.
Here we go.
That is one big pile of shit.
No, I shot him. Bullets in the fall killed him.
So Together is a story about a couple named Tim and Millie. Tim is played by Dave Franco, while Millie is played by Allison Brie. And at the beginning of this film, they're at a party at their apartment in the city, but you quickly find out that this isn't just any normal party. This is a going away party because Millie has landed a job at a school that's 3.5 hours from the city and from all of their friends. And you find out that Tim's not the happiest that they're actually going to move, because while he's in this relationship with her, you can kind of see that he's just going through the motions. He's a guitar player, but his band has never really taken off. And so because she has an opportunity, he's just going through the motions and moving with her. And so you can see there's a little bit of animosity there between the two of them, but she really wants her career to take off, and she's landed this good job. So as the movie progresses, you do see them move out to the country. Millie does take her job at the school. She starts meeting some new friends there, and Tim is so self-centered that it's pushing his relationship with Millie apart. Yes, they're together in life, but they're not together in their relationship. They're not together in love. And both of them sort of notice that, and they look for something they can do together, and they decide to go on a hike because they do live in a country area. There's a trail, and they go on this trail, and they end up getting lost and running into the remains of what looks like an old church. And one thing leads to another. They end up inside of this church that's actually sort of collapsed in on itself under the ground. And while they're down there, they run into something, an ancient evil that ends up wanting to put them physically together. And that is the best synopsis that I can give you for Together. If that sounds like a good time at the theater, well, it is playing now, and I would recommend you check this out, especially if you like body horror. Now I am going to get into my positives and my negatives for Together, but before I do that, if this is the first time you found my channel, well, I would love for you guys to hit that subscribe button. Check out all the different content on my channel, whether you like movie reviews, Blu-ray talk, or even ranked list videos. I've got a little bit of everything on my channel, and I'd love for you guys to check it out. All right, let's get into my positives and my negatives for Together.
I think you should sleep in the spare room tonight.
I agree. We need to keep our distance.
All right, this is a body horror film, so I feel like my first positive for this movie has to be how they handled the body horror, because I think sometimes they can go overboard with body horror, like, oh, that's what people are here for. Well, I'm here for the overall story, the acting, and additionally, I'm here for the body horror, so what are you going to give me? And to kind of give you guys an idea, I love the substance, but even in the substance, I think it went a little too far, to the point where I really enjoyed it, but I don't think somebody like my wife would enjoy it, because she's not really into body horror. But I didn't get that same thing out of this film. Yes, there's body horror in this film, but I never think they go too far with it. Yes, this movie is about two physical human beings being forced together, and that can sound really gross. And I guess there are parts that feel gross in this movie, but it never gets to that point where I was like, oh, I'm glad I didn't eat during this movie. Like, it was a movie I definitely could have eaten some theater food with, and I wouldn't have felt sick to my stomach while watching this film. So I think the body horror was done right. It was an appropriate amount, especially especially for what the story was calling for. My next positive for this movie is going to be the very well-placed jump scares throughout this film. There's not a jump scare every 5 minutes throughout this movie, and that's a good thing, at least for me. I don't appreciate when there's a jump scare, because after a while, it just gets absolutely annoying. But I do appreciate when there's a well-placed jump scare, because if they're few and far between, then it makes me sort of stay on edge. It makes me, the viewer, wonder, okay, what are they going to do next? When is this next jump scare going to be? And it keeps me at the edge of my seat. And then when they do a well-placed jump scare, well, that really works for me. There's two in particular that really worked for me. One of them has to do with a blanket. Not even going to go into it here. I'm not spoiling things, but again, they do some really well-placed jump scares throughout this film. My next positive for this movie is going to be that there was a little bit of dark comedy peppered in throughout this film. Now, before I go further with this positive, I want to state that this is not a comedy in any way. There's no laugh out loud moments in this movie. At least there weren't for me, but there was just enough of that little bit of dark comedy peppered in through here that did make me laugh, whether it was through some really tragic situations or it was just relationship issues. Because when you start messing with body horror, I feel like it can get really goofy at times, but when it started to look like it was going to be goofy, I loved how they played into that, and that little dark comedy actually worked for me. And then you've got the fact that these two have been in a long relationship. They've been in this relationship for a while. They know so much about each other, what irritates one another, and so you can kind of see that coming out of them. Now, I've been in a relationship with my wife for 10 years, and almost 9 of those we've been married. We have 3 kids, and so I think just seeing a little bit of that relationship tension throughout that can happen in a relationship, I think that really worked for me. A little bit of dark comedy goes a long way when I'm being scared the entire time. And my final positive for this movie is going to be the writing of the characters of both Tim and Millie in this movie, and the execution of those characters by both Dave Franco and Alison Brie. I bought into their relationship, even though it was dysfunctional, even though it was strained. I bought into their relationship as being real throughout this film, and I think that's a big selling point for this movie. If you want me to accept all the crazy things that are going on, I really have to buy into that relationship between Tim and Millie. And I think the writing of these characters was really smart, really well done. But again, the execution of that writing could have gone the wrong way. This really quickly could have gone into slapstick, terrible territory, but it never does that because the actor and actress that they cast in this film do a great job throughout this film. And I loved their relationship. Again, I bought into their relationship, and this whole movie hinges on you, the viewer, buying into their relationship. And I did. I bought into how dysfunctional it was, how torn apart it was, and how ultimately they really wanted to be with each other, but there was always things that were in the way, whether it was self-centered things from either one of them or just life in general. And again, I bought into that completely. That'll do it for my positives. Now we got to get over to my negatives. And my first negative for this movie is that the third act of this film feels rushed. Now, this movie takes its time building that relationship between both Tim and Millie, or sort of deconstructing it and then building it back together. They really do a great job with that in the first 2 acts of this film. I really believe that. The movie worked for me on a creepy level. It worked for me on a jump scare level. It worked for me on an acting level. But when it came to the story itself, all of it worked for me until the third act, until it was time to explain things, because this movie has a lot going on and it really needs to explain things to you. But because it takes so much time building everything else, sort of slowly building up to what this thing is, when they get to that third act reveal, it feels so rushed. It feels so fast. And I think one of the main reasons it felt so rushed to me was that they had to split up the characters of Tim and Millie in 2 different places, simultaneously showing you, the viewer, what they were learning about this thing. And it just seemed like, okay, they're doing this at the same time, scene for scene for scene for scene for you, the viewer, but not for the characters in the movie. And by the end of the film, I never felt like either one of them had a full grasp on what exactly was this thing that was bringing them physically together. And I think that was the biggest issue I had with this film coming out of the movie, was just like, wow, I loved what I saw, but the third act feels so rushed. And because of that rushed feeling, it leads to my other negative for this film, and that is that this ending, which is a WTF, what is going on moment at the end of this film, didn't feel as impactful to me because of that rushed feeling, because we found out everything so last minute, because these characters figure out everything so last minute, because everything that goes down when you get to the final moments of this movie and a door opens and you see something, you're like, whoa, I'd like to explore that more, and it's done. And you're like, oh, All right, so what now? Like, what happens next? And they don't go into any of that because the movie was so rushed at the end. And yeah, I guess this is a and B negative. Like, this is the A is that it was rushed, and B is that because of that rushed ending, it just didn't have as much impact on me, the viewer, that it could have had they taken their time with it. Had you tagged on another 30 minutes to this movie? Listen, I'm not asking for a 3-4 hour movie, but had you tagged on a little more time to this to sort of explore that ending a little bit more, sort of get those characters exactly where you want them for the viewer. Because of that rush feeling, I think in turn, that ending that could have been really impactful on me and made it one of my favorite movies of the year ends up feeling very underwhelming. But overall, would I recommend this movie to people? Well, I'll say this. If you're a big horror fan or you're a big body horror fan, then definitely go check this one out. Now, if you're not a big body horror fan, I would say you could still check this out because, like I said earlier, it never gets to that extreme where I felt grossed out. So I think you could still enjoy this if you're a big fan of horror movies with some weird, crazy stuff going on. But if you're not a big fan of horror, then I would probably say you could wait for this one on streaming. You could watch this one at home and you'd have just as good a time with it. But guys, those are just my opinions because that's my review for Together. Have you guys had a chance to see this film yet? If you have, let me know in that comment section down below. I'd love to hear any and all of your thoughts where we agree or disagree in that comment section down below. And finally, guys, if you like this video, don't forget to hit that like button because it helps the video, it helps the channel, and it helps me right here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. All right, guys, we got to the end of my Together review. I had a great time watching this movie, had an even better time making this video. I hope we have some fun conversations about this film in that comment section. And it just occurred to me that since it's August now, we are officially in the spooky time of the year. Yeah, it's right. It starts August 1st and summer is now behind us. But that means there's going to be a ton of horror content coming from me over the next couple of months, especially in the month of October. I've got something really fun planned for you guys, and I hope you enjoy it. But until then, if you want to check out any of the other content on my channel, well, I've got all of my horror movie reviews right there, and I've got all of my 2025 movie reviews right there.